Welcome to the Molybdenum Software Show, which you should be watching if you want to get on with this software development skill set. And otherwise, join us so that we are three. But sometimes we're three. And then we'd be four. That's how the numbers add up. If you think this is for you, please send me a message. Jeremy, take the helm.
All right. Sharing screen here. Okay. PR. Put it up. There we go. And mob start 7. Okay. So we thrashed around trying to write a helper macro that did not work out. And we had a plan for next steps, but I honestly don't remember what they were. Can you jog my memory?
We were passing a value by ownership instead of by reference.
Right.
And then I think we went a step too far by changing any of the implementation. This was supposed to be or maybe
Testing
a little
only.
too much of the implementation, because it is used in implementation as well. So can you go to fetcher main, please? I think that's where we we should restore. Or you could just git restore crates fetcher.
Okay, happy to do that. Can you help me with a cargo build incantation that failed?
Sure.
What is it? -- all
workspace, perhaps?
Workspace. There we go. Okay, I'm confused. I thought we were deep in compiler when we called it a day.
Maybe all target.
Wrong branch? Maybe
Yes,
what? Sorry?
I think you are. No, you're not on the bench. We reused this branch temporarily. Maybe build all targets flag.
There we go. Thank you. Okay. And then what did you want me to do? Revert some changes?
Maybe show us the diff. It's a good place to start.
Full diff, or is that no?
Fetcher source test. Fetcher, there's nothing in fetcher other than source test. Okay, show us what breaks. Show us the first error.
Okay, here we go. Fetcher test. I'll switch to the editor in a minute, but oh boy, a lot of borrow stuff.
This is
Here we are.
I think in Rust, if you find yourself using the terminal, then it means you didn't set up. You're not happy with the setup of your editor.
Well, I think the LSP lines is probably the key piece to bridge the gap, because I don't know. I mean, I feel like we've definitely had situations where like these diagnostic errors are just missing some important context. It's like half of it's like a thing that's in two places, and the other half is especially really useful.
In mobbing, that you have to kind of with lines, we can all look at different parts of because there are different parts of the same problem. And with this, you can only see one of them at a time.
Yeah.
You want to try enabling it?
Let's do it.
You can take a look at mine again. It has a little value in it. Would probably save you an hour. Yeah, I called it inline diagnostics because it's like a topic, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'll dump mine in my. I have a diagnostics, which is, I guess, the most related file I have right now. I won't commit this, so I can agonize over the location offline. Um, okay, cargo. No, wow, not quite. Option does not exist. Plugins equals. Oops, plugins dot LSP lines. Oh, and then I'm going to want this to avoid the floats.
Yep.
Okay, so I don't have any for that yet, so I can just, I'll move that later. All right, and lib comes from the top. Yeah. Alrighty, here we go. Ah, sure. Ooh, let's deploy. Okay. Okay, nice. And it doesn't look like I'm in the dark anymore. Here we go. Here we go. All right, get ready for some lines. There you go. Unlinked file. All right, more stuff.
Rotate.
Go for it.
Many clicks. Start. Zalige. And my editor. Pepper test, I suppose. That's easy. That no longer. Wait, no, that's not easy. Hold on, what? This is the import test context. This is the test context of the fetcher. We have two of these.
Makes sense, because they are different.
Okay, so binding for associated type output references a lifetime A, which does not appear in the trait input types. It no longer has. I think this is like we started. Or it needs a lifetime. It, why does it need a lifetime?
Can you explain to me what a local box feature is and how does it differ from a box feature?
It's a box feature, but without the send.
Okay, so send what is send? Send is you're able to move things from change ownership of things. Is that what that means?
Not everything obeys inherited mutability, though. This is continuing a conversation.
Yeah. Let's dive right in the middle of this. I'm sure I can handle it.
Some types allow you to have multiple aliases of a location in memory while mutating it. I think aliases are like the super type of references and pointers.
Okay.
Unless these types use synchronization to manage this access, they are absolutely not thread safe. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Rust captures this through the send and sync traits. A type is send if so. This is a manual. I think it's they're added manually,
Okay. So there's
or
no like
automatically.
compiler
I don't
enforcement of
remember.
this. This is on me
There,
as a human.
uh, well, there are bounds. Sorry. I need to refresh myself as
Yeah.
well. A
And then
type is.
just
Mhm.
spitballing, something that would be safe to another thread would be something that uses a synchronization primitive under the hood, or something that is like implemented atomically, like in the processor,
Or something that is simply data.
like a read-only sort of thing.
No, just data. Just data. If it's if it's a like a file struct, which is a handle to a real thing that requires synchronization. Does that make sense? Then it's not send.
I mean, why would you say like data, say like a byte
Because
array?
if you send the value to another thread, now it's not in the first thread. Now it's only in another thread. So data is safe to send.
Okay. So I guess what I'm confused about is the opening paragraph said some types allow you to have multiple aliases of a location in memory. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
is that talking about sync? Because like send, you're not going to have multiple aliases because you're transferring ownership, right?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe that sentence is pre-shadowing the sync type,
Right.
which is okay. All
Sync
right.
if it is safe to share between threads. So T is sync if and only if ref T is send. So if you can send references of this to another thread, then it is considered sync.
Okay. And arrays, to use the same example, references to arrays are not safe to send because then two different people have a reference to an array and they could start manipulating the exact same
The,
index at the exact same
no,
time.
they are.
Okay. So
But you're just
am I talking,
you're
what about ref mutes? Maybe.
exactly.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. So I guess what's confusing to me is the very first sentence used the word mutability, but we aren't talking about mutability in this bullet list. So I guess I should just stop interrupting you and let us read the whole damn thing.
Um, this is the gist of it. This is all we should get into, I think.
Okay. So I think what's confusing to me is those bullet points don't mention mutability.
Uh, We can continue to read a little.
I mean, I'm also happy to have it in your words. Like,
Well, I don't I don't know what this is going to say. Um, so I would rather, you know, what I remember is that it's what seems obvious just to make sense in my mind.
mhm,
Like, well, data obviously you can share references. So basically, sync types are like the primitives of Rust are send
okay.
and
So
uh
maybe here's a question.
and
If I
sync.
wanted to build in Rust a struct that was like, an early 2000s style, web page view visitor tracker thing. So it was like, under the hood, the struct was an int that got incremented. And I'd like to be able to share this thing with a bunch of threads and let them all punch you know, the counter. So I want them to have a mutable reference to this thing, and I'd like them to be able to, uh, need, increment it. Ideally, at the same time, maybe some synchronization needs to happen under the hood. I don't know.
That's the point.
Uh,
That
that would be
synchronization needs to happen.
well, or maybe not, because maybe you can implement it using some atomic like increment and save like register operation under the hood.
Some synchronization needs to happen.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that counts as synchronization. It's like if the processor has a atomic operation for it. Um, so that would be a mutable reference that I'd be handing off to multiple threads.
No,
No.
no, no, because uh, a mutable reference can only exist once.
Okay. So then what's the type mechanism for me to be able to hand off something that, a counter that multiple threads could increment?
So that is not the borrow checker goes only so far. The borrow checker is like the the primitives of it are quite simple to understand.
Hmm.
Something exists only it's one is owned only in one place, and then you can have either any number of
Yeah.
references or a single
Mutable.
mutable reference.
Okay. Didn't know that, but
And
that makes sense.
then if you want to send stuff into multiple threads or to have it owned by multiple concurrent scopes, then we're getting into we're kind of the borrow checker doesn't help. It helps us reach until that point. Then from then on, we need to use some other language features, such as the send trait helps us with that because it needs to be sent in order to be sent to another thread. In the case that it is really about sending to another thread, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about concurrency, and then you just duplicate a ARC,
Oh, okay.
asynchronous reference counting,
Hmm.
or a mutex.
Okay.
And those types, like a mutex is send, even though it's shared data,
Got it.
and it's mutable, right? But it's not mutable because you are sending a mutable reference. It's kind of a wrapper,
I see.
right? It's a mechanism. It's not just data.
Okay. All right. So that's a mechanism for sharing mutable stuff. Like you're forced to introduce something like an arc or some other. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
got it. And so for people who are really obsessive about like performance, and they are trying to use some like, I keep alluding to these like, increment and set atomic operations that like x86 has, um, where it doesn't feel to me like you actually need a synchronization primitive because the processor can do it atomically. Is that
I'm not familiar with that. Don't
okay?
never heard of any of
I'll
those.
admit I've never actually, I'm a friggin' Python programmer. I don't care about this stuff normally, but I like, I hear about things that people care about sometimes. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right, cool. That was very helpful context. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'll take over again.
Yes, please.
I like how I hadn't appreciated this when you first showed me it. Part of the reason I steered away from this thing was it's like with my hints, it's hard to tell where the code ends and the hints begin.
Oh yes, please change the color of that to some gray.
Yeah, I don't know how to change this, nor do I know how to change the background of this, but those are both things I'd like to do. If you know, I'm happy to make the change right now, but
No, I don't know.
I don't want to waste your time thrashing around with Vim stuff. Uh, does this seem bearable to keep
Yeah,
working?
it's
All
fine.
right, wait. So binding for associated type output references lifetime A, which does not appear in the trait input type. So let's start with
What trait?
Rust 101. What are the trait input types?
The trait input. I don't know. Trait input. The trait here is fn once. Ah, okay. Test context
Mm-hmm.
is the so this trait fn once is kind of a special trait because it has a special syntax associated with it, right?
Yeah, this arrow, this thin arrow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the input are probably the parameters
Okay, so
and
they're
the
talking
single
about how
test
this
code.
thing does not have a context, or
Uh-huh.
sorry, a lifetime, and we know it did because we just removed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should be able to remove the for to not give this uh yeah. And then that would be some default. Like I don't know why that missing lifetime specifier. Missing this function's return type contains a borrowed value. Try static. I think it's just static. That's right.
Like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Static means if it's a reference, then it's a static lifetime reference. Or maybe it's not a reference and then it's just irrelevant. Right? If it's an owned value that's equivalent to static.
Okay. All right. Test context. Sure seems like the test would need or want a mutable reference to test context. But maybe not. So I guess I won't declare it mute. We'll see where that takes us. Okay, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Hit create run, GitHub client. The run wants,
That yeah, run wants an impl GitHub client as that GitHub client, right?
okay, yes, it wants an
And we're
impl
giving it
GitHub client.
a
Oh, so
reference.
we have
We're
a
giving it self.
implementation of that somewhere, right? Impl GitHub. client. Huh,
Yeah.
we've done it. It is an impl GitHub client.
Yes, but this function takes self by ref mute.
Ah, uh,
That's what we have here.
do we just change that to self then?
If it makes sense.
I mean, that
Running.
seems to be what we're trying to do, right? Just hand this thing off to the test.
Where is the run called?
So this is a helper method that's used in many of our tests. Like we do some setup. Nope, that's setup code, more PR, setup code. Here we go. Here's a test, which does,
Right.
I don't know, run.
Okay. I remember. So run must not take by owned, because then it would be used only once. It would consume itself.
Okay, can run return the thing at the end?
It could, but I don't think we want to do that.
Okay. So
I
are you
think we
saying
simply
that
want to
impl we
change the
wrote,
implementation to
the
be
impl GitHub client?
yeah, of like what wasn't it? What did this is this changed at all?
I think we probably changed it to this, yeah. So now we're changing it back.
Can you prove that?
The API test macro. Yeah, so there's our impl test client. Nope, that's not it, sorry. Impl GitHub client for ref mute.
It was ref mute. I think we should change it back to ref mute.
Okay, see how this goes. Okay, so now it's the connection, which I guess they want us to borrow mutably because that's what run takes. So I'll just do that. At, whoops, at mute. Oh, that is a weird behavior.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now we have to say we are getting our hands on a mutable context. So I'll do the thing.
It's notice this is just a modifier on the binding.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really change the type.
Okay.
In a way, this is not Rust's most. It's not one of Rust's most helpful features.
Okay.
It is just saying, right? This is kind of an extra, really an extra feature, right? I could imagine Rust without this. This is just saying this binding, which exists only in this scope.
Yeah, this is like
eh,
let versus const in JavaScript.
right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. And then what's confusing is the mute keyword gets used for other things in Rust.
For the references, for the mutable references.
And that's like a fundamentally different thing that reuses the same keyword.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Well, I mean, nice to not have too many keywords in a language, but that does, I guess, increase the learning curve a little bit. Okay. That was satisfying. Um, there we go. Okay, we're killing it. I'm sure this is going to work out great. Okay, that's that file. So we're down to a whole smaller number of errors here. But who knows where this is going. No errors? Is it just warnings? Really? Like this stuff will build now? Wow, it compiles to her. That means it works, right?
Most likely.
So this was us trying to write the macro.
I would delete all of this. This is not
We're
valuable.
gonna do it in a separate PR
Mm-hmm.
at this point. Okay. I like that. Health check OK is there.
Yeah.
Um, and then this psych
Resolve the
test
warnings.
is just not used, and this is that. Okay, X still not used. I don't know. Okay, and then we've got this thing. Remove the mute. Really? You say so? Unnecessary let binding. Let and return. Just don't do that. Is what they're saying.
Try the quick fix.
Okay. Return expression direct. Okay, there we go. Did the thing. Now, do we have any warning stuff? I think we're without warning.
Cargo
Yep.
Clippy with all targets.
Thank you. Okay. Seems to be compiling, which in Rust means it's working, right? Nope. Bummer. 2 test jobs. I'll rotate. Next. Do we change the semantics somehow?
Maybe something got dropped.
Yeah.
Diff. The differences. There's no drop there, but that drop. I think it happens anyway.
But now happens inside at the very end of the F callback because we hand it off to F. F does something with it maybe, and then before it returns, it drops the thing we handed it, the CTX.
It doesn't matter, right?
I don't know. I mean, I guess what I'm confused about, because I just don't understand all this, is like F, the function, returns a future. So it's like important that it not drop the context when the function returns. We need to drop the context after the
But
age
now
thing.
the context is passed by ownership, by
Yeah.
value. So it's not dropped.
It's passed by
Value.
sure, but I mean if you then mentally step a layer down, F itself owns context.
Mm-hmm.
F returns a future and then drops context.
I think the context gets moved into the future.
Oh, okay. Got it. Very cool.
Into the future.
Back to the future.
That's that doesn't even. I think that's the same. That's just explicitly dropping the test context.
Okay.
At the end of that, it's a drop at the end of a scope. You know, that's just equivalent to not calling it. That's just, and still there's a difference, right? Target says.
And if we had to make a wild guess, probably that the Postgres database is getting killed sooner than we want it to, right?
Go 3. Yeah, that might be.
So that would make
Maybe.
sense, right? We're trying to
Are
talk to the
we?
database to return a 404.
Is one of the changes? Yeah, I think it makes sense. Perhaps one of the changes we're doing is that we're dropping the entire, like we're not passing enough. Like we're picking a field out of somewhere, and let's see this again. Picking a field out of somewhere instead of keeping.
Maybe? I don't remember writing that, but also not at my best right now.
DB context source lib line 126 130. This is initializing and passing it on to that function and awaiting it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a problem with that. But that's what it is. That's the change. The rest is not important. It's, yep. Let's look at it from the perspective of the call sites. This is in test util. The implementation of test context with. We're calling database context with. That DB context is passed by value now.
Yep.
And then
Was the explicit drop really the
look.
same?
We're getting a
Mm-hmm.
URL string, but this DB context is dropped. It's not even moved into this async block. See?
Okay. But that's where the explicit drop, like you said earlier, the explicit drops was the same thing.
Wait, hold on. How this is a test context, and how does this work without a move? Oh, because the test occurs in here. It's awaited in here. So it's supposed to be alive. This thing is supposed to be alive
Well, but
while this is tested.
when does this get dropped?
The end of the scope, the end of the block here, the async block.
Really? Like, I mean, if it's getting handed off by ownership to the test function, isn't it up to the test
Oh,
function to decide what to do with it?
No, I'm sorry. No, you're right. Yeah, but this is, yeah. No, you're right. I
So
mean,
isn't
in some way, it's yeah.
it seems like the difference is important here though, because I bet our test says, "Oh, thanks for that test context. I'm gonna like insert some stuff into the database," which works, and then it doesn't use the test context anymore, and then maybe the test context gets dropped immediately.
No changes.
Does that sound plausible?
Uh, we don't explicitly drop test contexts in tests, but let's take a look at some tests.
So what I would like to try
Share screen.
is I would, oh, thank you, to test my theory, I would like to just run that one test health check. Okay, does that work? Okay, great. And then here, if I were to, looking at this thing, when does CTX get dropped?
End of the scope.
So that's equivalent to this.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'd like to try that. Really, too many
Mhm.
slashes. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Does that? Do you agree that that was not the same? The test is passing now.
Oh, I think I know what's going on. Client CTX. Okay, I didn't know that it works this way. So CTX, you see the CTX client. So our only
Mm-hmm.
usage of the text context is by calling client on it. See that?
Yep.
And client probably does not take by ownership. It's just a getter of a field, right? Wait, it's a field itself.
Mm-hmm.
It is a field.
Yep.
And get takes by what? Ref mute?
Ref.
Ref. So even though this is an async move block, I think CTX is not moved into it, which I find surprising because I thought the move semantics of the move keyword on a block or on a closure, they move in whatever is mentioned.
I mean, I disagree. It smells to me like it's getting moved in and then getting dropped as soon as we don't need it.
But that's not how dropping works.
How sure are you about that?
I'm sure dropping it works at the end of the scope.
Okay. So can I do something to move it in up here? Prove to test that there? Can I reference it in some way that would require it to be moved in?
A binding,
Like,
just shadow it.
okay, let's CTX equals CTX.
Yeah,
Okay, and you're saying this will also cause the test to pass?
I'm guessing that it
Okay,
would.
you are right. So if I comment out this line of code, the test fails. Yep. Okay, so we have two different ways of moving it, I guess. And is there some way of doing this from outside of the test? Or is that
I would just
impossible?
like to take a moment to just absorb the reality here.
This is turning your world upside down. It's not turning my world upside down because I don't have a world.
Just a piece of my world that is large enough to make me understand that I did not understand
Mm-hmm.
something that is. And the reason that I am responding in with this severity is because this is critical for async code. I thought I can just move keyword and then everything that is mentioned is moved. But that's not the
Hmm.
case. And look how important it is.
Yep. Yeah, like there's some implicit connection here. Like, doesn't make sense to be
Try
making API calls while the database is getting killed.
try removing the move keyword.
Specifically talked about CTX.client, but talked about borrowing it.
Get it now.
Okay,
I
so
wasn't I wasn't wrong.
CTX gets moved in. No,
No, that's the problem. That's what I was wrong about. I wasn't wrong about, yeah, merely mentioning something does move it in. But in this case, we're not mentioning it. We're only mentioning a field of it. So the field gets moved in, the value of the field gets moved in. And that, when you do that, right, when you move a field out of a struct, the struct becomes invalid.
okay. So can you just, you've used the word move a couple times, which is
Uh-huh.
smells odd to me because they're using the word borrowed here.
Yes, without the move keyword, it is borrowed.
Oh, right. Okay. So here it's a move.
Yes. But
And
the
once
thing
a
that is,
piece of a struct has been handed off, the struct itself is useless, so it's free to drop.
it is invalid for use.
Yeah. Okay.
And what's
So like
happening here
ideally,
is that
go ahead.
CTX will is simply not moved into this async block,
Yeah.
and it will be dropped.
Is there some clever way of saying like, hey, this thing carries with it this thing because this thing's really important and it doesn't make sense to have a test client without a database context? Like some way of
Uh,
tying their lifetime. Like, would it be
yeah,
as
we
simple as
we
like referencing the lifetime here?
we
This A?
we. I think what we could do is not make this field public. So you can't just take this, because as soon as you take this client, yeah, you
Yeah.
can't basically
But then
taking
we're
away
gonna
this
be
client. It's invalid.
burdened with exposing the entire poem client API um in our struct, aren't we?
We could borrow the field from the struct.
Borrow the field from, and whereas what we're doing is we're moving the field.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, maybe can we just say, hey, this thing can't be moved? It can only be borrowed?
No. But we can
Hmm.
we can get make a getter that obtains reference to it.
I see.
But these are not public.
Okay.
This cannot be torn asunder. You like my, my biblical, my
I don't get the reference. Sorry. Is that a
my
Solomon
old
thing?
my old English.
Oh, not a specific biblical reference, just the choice of
Mm-hmm.
language.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and before we do this, because what you're describing makes sense, and I'm super down to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it achievable with this? We have this lifetime A here. Is there no way to use that to say, hey, these all must live together?
No,
And why
making a field
is that?
public means you can anything can take that field.
Even if it's got the same lifetime as something else?
You can't just say that a field has some lifetime. You can't just attach a lifetime to a field. You can attach a lifetime to a type
Mm-hmm.
in the field. But that's none of that is idiomatic. None of that is like the right thing to do here.
I guess what I'm confused about is we said the client got moved out of the test context. I get it. But what about this like lifetime A on the test context and lifetime A on the client? Like what is it saying if not that these must live and die together? And I just haven't done any reading on lifetimes, so I don't really know what they are.
You're saying, let's undo this. You're saying this is already borrowing.
I
And
don't
what
know
it's
about
borrowing,
borrowing.
hmm?
I don't know about borrowing.
Well, that's what it means.
Okay.
It means that this struct is borrowing. Why is it borrowing? Or in other words, it has a reference. In one of its fields, it has a reference, and it is this
Mm-hmm.
field. Okay? So if um, so having this, having this a value of this type means that you've already borrowed something. Something else must exist in order for you to have this. The thing that you've borrowed from. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Not
The thing that
really.
this field, this client borrows from something. Does that make sense?
I'm confused about the borrowing because test context, the change we've been making in this branch is to have it be a wholly owned thing that we hand around, like move around. I mean, so it didn't feel to me like any borrowing was happening.
Well, this has a lifetime.
Uh huh.
So I'm not sure if am I in the wrong branch?
No. Uh, but I guess like what you're saying is anytime you see a lifetime, that
I
means
think we I
borrows
think we
are
kind of
occurring.
wanted to do that, but then we said, okay, let's start with database context first.
Oh, okay.
I think we said we have two fields that borrow, both this and that, and now we've nearly managed to make this not borrowing.
Okay. All right. Um, sorry for the distraction. Are you saying like we could should we go the rest of the way and remove the lifetime from this struct, and that would be another way of solving the problem we're running into right now?
It would not be a way to solve that problem
Okay.
because the problem doesn't have to do with any references. The problem has to do. It's a synchronization problem. It's a systems problem. This DB context represents an existence of a database server running,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be dropped. It'll be killed when this is dropped.
Yeah.
This test client in this test context struct represents is a client to test that like a running app that uses this database. So it will fail without this, but it depends on it.
Yep.
So the existence of this struct, the purpose of it that is not currently fulfilled is to make sure that these two fields exist together.
Mm-hmm.
And when we ended up doing here because of the change we made, it's not here. Where is it?
Health check is okay is where we're hacking on
The,
the
the, the
if you took
tests themselves
yeah.
is we ended up again tearing this asunder.
Yep.
Which is invalid and should be prevented at this level.
Yep. I totally agree. So I think I don't like grok lifetimes, but that's okay. They serve some
No,
purpose.
I have an explanation. I can help you explain
Oh, okay.
understand that.
Start. Share screen.
What did I do? Oh, so lifetime, yeah. If you tried, yeah, the lifetime of the field test client, uh, it's okay. I mean, yes, what you're saying is, well, the struct is associated with the lifetime of the test client. That's what you're saying, right?
Which struct? This struct?
Yes, the test
Yep.
context of lifetime
Mm-hmm.
A
Yep.
is associated with the lifetime A inside the client field, right?
Yes.
That does not, and you're surprised that that does not kind of protect us from what we're doing wrong, right?
Yeah, it seems to me like it would keep this thing alive as long as this thing's alive, and for this thing to stay alive, it has to keep this thing alive. I mean, maybe it'd be clearer to put a lifetime on this as well, but I don't know. I'm just reacting to the word lifetime because what we are talking about
It
is
is,
about how long
but
these
you're
structs
right.
live.
You said something correct. It You said it would keep the client field alive as long as the test context struct is alive.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're doing in
This is
practice
the other direction.
is we are tearing the client field out of that struct.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I understand. Lifetimes are basically, this is not like a two-way street. Like what this is saying is for you to have a valid test context, this thing must live at least as long as the test context, but it is allowed to live longer than the test context.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the thing I was missing. I was thinking this was a two-way street. It was like these must live for the exact same amount of time.
There you
But
go.
the fact that it is
Maybe.
possible to tear it apart, tear it asunder, proves that
Mm-hmm.
I'm very wrong. That mental model was wrong. And now I get it. And then I guess my question would be, is there a mechanism in the life cycle universe to annotate saying like, hey, actually I do not want this thing to outlive this thing?
No, I don't
Okay,
think so.
got it. Because this is a mechanism to say, I don't want this thing to outlive this thing. I'm guessing I can't like write the inverse of this somehow. Like put the test context inside of the client. I
The
don't
only
think that's
reason
possible.
that the struct test context has a lifetime associated with it is because one of its fields does.
Yeah. Okay.
It's contagious, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like if this field needs a lifetime, then I must have a lifetime to give it a lifetime. Yeah. And I think the useful learning for me here is lifetimes are not like there's a directionality to it. It's like what this is saying about test context is different than what this is saying about this field. Because what's saying here is this thing must live longer than this thing. And
Mm-hmm.
here it's saying this thing must live shorter than or equal to this thing.
It's not even that this field must live, the type of this field must live longer than test context. It's not even that.
Okay.
It's the same lifetime. This lifetime A. It's the lifetime A essentially is on the field.
Oh, okay. So the way to read this is there is a there's a lifetime A and both of them must outlive A.
There are no two lifetimes here. So there is nothing to outlive.
Well, I mean, like, must not be dropped, like, must still be valid.
In a context where this struct is constructed, it borrows from some other lifetime. Let's call it B.
Okay.
B must outlive A.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
That's it.
Well, but A is referring to the what? Like, would you say it's the lifetime of this struct? Or it's
Yes,
okay.
it's no. I'm sorry. It's a lifetime
Mm-hmm.
of this struct. In which you could say the because it's the only one.
Right. But it could have multiple. Okay. All right. So I think I'm getting it a little bit. So when we constructed a test context here, it implicitly got a lifetime. It doesn't look like we're explicitly specifying it.
Yeah, it got the lifetime from that. The API client field already has a lifetime. So that's the lifetime that test context got. It is right. A is A.
Okay. So this thing got a lifetime by virtue of being a boxed in endpoint. Basically, by virtue of putting this thing on the heap, it has some sort of, there's going to be a free at some point, and that free indicates the end of this thing.
Well, first, it's not because it's a boxed in endpoint.
Does everything in Rust have a lifetime? Like, does this EB
Uh
URL have a lifetime?
no, maybe I'm sorry. Maybe it is. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It is. But the lifetime is in the output probably,
Okay.
which is collapsed here. You don't see it.
Yeah, but output equals.
Oof. Well, I don't see the lifetime. So, somewhere it is elided here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but
I
like
think
some
it's
types
in.
have lifetime.
Yeah, I think it's probably din endpoint that has a lifetime.
Okay. All right.
I think you can take a look at the type of box endpoint, and that will tell you. There.
Dynamically typed endpoint
Yeah.
using this, so you get statically typed the result. We need to add some indirect.
You see a
Yep.
lifetime A, and then a lifetime A is a bound on the what's in the box.
Okay. Got it. All right. Um, and so I guess what I'm a little confused about is this A right here is referring to the lifetime. It would be incorrect for me to think of this as referring to the lifetime of the struct. Instead, this is a lifetime borrowed from something else. And the promise
Yeah.
is that test context will outlive A. And then furthermore, another promise is that client will outlive A.
The opposite. A would whatever it borrows will outlive it.
Okay. So sorry. A will outlive test context.
Yeah.
Similarly, A will outlive client.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Now, if
like
that is
the
the
point
only
is.
two,
Mhm.
if that's the only two promises, let me just like
Yeah.
make sure I understand. Like, here's our timeline, right? Like, beginning of the universe to the end of the universe here.
Uh-huh.
Oh, good Lord. I apologize. How do you decode? There we go.
That
Oh
was
my
great.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Go away.
That is still great.
Okay. So there's A, which is like over here. And then there's the like, there are two promises we're making. One is that like test context, A will outlive test context. And then another promise we're making is that A will outlive client. That's what these two things are saying, right?
Yeah.
But then like there does not seem to be any promise. If these are the only two promises, there are, and then I wanted to like flatten this timeline. I could flatten it in two different ways, right? Like I could say, hey, test context dies here, client dies here, and then lifetime A ends here, or I could flip it. And like both of these concrete linear timelines satisfy these two promises.
Yes.
And so that's where I'm confused.
But there are
Is that
other things at play.
okay?
The relationship between a struct and its field.
Got it. Okay, so there's a third promise not captured by lifetimes, which says like, hey, this field client must uh, last longer than the test client or something.
Well, it's not a promise. A
Sure.
struct in layout in memory includes the field.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like the way that this thing is actually created is you allocate, um, enough space for these two pointers or objects or whatever they are, and you can't free pieces of a thing you've allocated. You free it all, or
Mm-hmm.
you free none of it.
And which is relevant conversation because in our case we move a field out of the struct, thereby invalidating the struct. Now I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that that means that the struct is immediately dropped. There are some semantics, right? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
them. Or is
Okay.
it is the rest of the struct dropped normally at the end of the scope?
Got it. But okay, so let me make sure I understand the details here, or like have a mental model. So basically, uh, since test context is disappearing, it's possible to move client. In terms of like what's actually happening in RAM when client gets moved, because like struct is some like continuous allocated set of bytes
Mm-hmm.
either in the stack or in the heap,
Mm-hmm.
and um, when client gets moved, that maybe means one of two things under the hood. Either, yeah, like the whole set of bytes is still there, but like the only live part of it that's being used by our application is like this piece.
No, no.
Oh, okay. So then
I
what it
don't think that
actually means
happens
is
because on the stack, as soon as you move something, you actually move it. And if you like,
okay,
you know, on the stack, it's not like test, it's not bar, what, the
okay.
field is
So then like truly what's happening here is like a pointer is getting copied to somewhere else, or
no
I don't know,
pointer,
maybe the
no pointer. It's on the stack. The field is moved somewhere else on the stack, right?
well, but I mean this is a
Or on the
little
heap,
complicated, right? Like
wherever
this
it
thing,
ends up.
yeah, okay. So this thing gets moved, and the thing that gets moved might itself have a pointer inside of it.
Yes.
But like, yeah, I get it. Um, okay. And then at the point that you're doing a move like that, you have torn the thing apart, and the old thing is no longer valid.
The struct will not be allowed for usage.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. That was very helpful. All
Beautiful.
right, I will rotate. Probably have no changes. I don't. Go for it.
If I go back to main and take a look at this struct, why do I have an error? I'm in main. Shouldn't have an error in main. I'm looking for a struct called test context in
Yep.
API.
No, we're working
This.
on the fetcher.
So we
One
have two of
second.
these.
Nope, I'm just sorry. Not enough for me.
Okay.
You're in the right place.
Already in main, this is not safe. This can be moved away from the struct.
Okay, but because we're passing test context around by borrowing or reference, it it always like lives until the very end because we have an explicit drop at the end. So that
The only
forces test.
way. So it is safe. It's because the only way to obtain the test context. No, I mean, yeah, you could technically try to construct this yourself, and then you could do whatever you want. But
Yeah,
like, if you use with, your callback obtains it as a ref mute, and then you cannot
right. Yeah. So it's
abuse
like
it.
weird and foot gunny ish, but the way the framework is built and used right now, there's no issue in main. And we're gonna make it better here.
Yeah, I suppose we could couple these things. So this was
Yeah, I
API.
think we could split it into two PRs if we wanted, but given that
No
there
need.
isn't actually an issue in main, it feels like a little arbitrary.
So these are not public anymore here, and I don't
Agreed.
think we'll need this anymore because now they're not even public, right?
Wonderful.
And now we should get some errors somewhere. I don't see any though. Why am I not staying? No, we do have. Oh, does
Wonderful.
this mean I? Oh, I do. I'm sorry. This didn't look well. There we go.
Looks good. So can we
So
do
this
this in a
field is,
referentially transparent way, or do we have to change all these to like function calls?
yeah, this will be. There's
Get
no
client or client
private.
parens.
Private is private.
Cool.
So it'll be call.
Works for me.
Do we have get set? We have it in cargo lock. We have it in cargo tom as well, but in the store. So I'm going to. You see what we're doing? This is what get set does. You can say, I'm deriving
Okay.
copy getters, and you can say, on this ID, I want to
Lovely.
get copy of. So I'm going to go back.
Java beans, right? That's what
Let's.
this is.
I am sorry, I'm not familiar with dependencies. This would be workspace true. Go to workspace. And that would be workspace dependencies get sets DEFG XDE get set. That seems right. And then over at testutil, right? Testutil is creates API. So API cargo download
Mm-hmm.
dependencies. This is only testutil, right? So this would be a dev
Yeah, I think you can
dependency.
go into
Right?
dev. Agreed.
BCD G get set dot workspace true. Now we can do that, right? When we can derive, debug is always nice, but I think unrelated. Get set getters, copy getters, mute getters. I think getters by default is like reference getters, right? Not copy.
Okay.
So this is getters. And which is like we need both, right?
For both fields.
I think we're using both
Probably.
somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, we probably
Get
killed the
set
database using that DB.
get this part I don't remember, sorry. Get set get copy. I think this is get.
What does the word copy mean?
Get code. That's good. And for this as well.
What does get versus get copy? What's the copy?
Get this is a copy type. Branch
Oh,
ID
okay.
is basically
That
derive
rather than
copy
giving you a
type.
reference to it or something.
Exactly. Gets you a copy.
Okay. Make sense.
So now we should have some errors, but I'm not going into them. I'm going to rotate.
Okie dokie.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay. Getting close. Cannot borrow data in block. Booth returns a ref, but we want the ref mute. How do we do that? Mute getters. Get mute. Okay. Get set. Get, get mute. Okay.
I'm back.
I tried and failed. So I've
What?
fixed all the errors except for, and that was just adding parentheses. So very straightforward.
Uh huh.
this one right here is where we killed the database. The
Yeah.
Git was just giving us a non-mutable reference.
Oh, we need get
We
mute, I
want
suppose.
a mutable reference. So I added this.
But I think you need to
Um,
derive something else as well.
okay. Derive
Like,
where? Oh, up here.
yeah, I think
Okay.
it's like get set
Yep.
mute
Got it.
getters.
Okay. Yeah, that would have taken me a few days. Here we go. Why doesn't it give me an error that I'm using a thing that I can't use? All right.
Did you get a not helpful error?
Well, I mean, you see the error I'm looking at. It doesn't seem to have changed anything.
Oh, because mute getters are not the same method call. I think it's like get mute.
Okay.
The method itself.
There it is. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Sure. But the thing I was frustrated about is like it let me do this get mute, like this compiled. Well, didn't
Oh,
compile,
really?
but
Oops.
like
That's an oopsie.
um
No, that's
like right
definitely an oopsie. It shouldn't accept
this
that, right?
macro should be more strict is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Or this macro should be more strict?
That's not a macro. Only the
This
derive is a macro. That is
okay.
an attribute that doesn't on its like does it on its own. But if you comment the derive, you'll just get errors for those.
Got it.
Not found.
Yeah, makes sense. Because now they're being treated as macro.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I'm frustrated at the get set library, not at Rust, I guess. They
Yeah.
just made my life a little harder than it needed to be.
True. True. True.
All right, great. We're in business. Cargo test. Oh my god. Cargo test. There we go. Do we have any conflict markers in our code? Indeed we do. Okay, those are commented out. Deleting them. Beautiful. Well, that feels nice. All right. Um, so now it's not possible for people to drop the database context and still have a test client, which is good. So I'll do a mob next, a mob done, I think. Sound good?
uh, let's review the changes one more time.
Diff, diff, API test macro. Here we go. Let me do that again. Okay, from the top. We added get set to the top. We are referencing it as a workspace dependency. Dead code thing and comment went away, which is lovely. Now people have getters. I guess they don't need a mutable reference to client anywhere. Maybe we'll need that in the future. Who knows? Okay, mute context. You own the context. And then parentheses, lots of friends. Kind of weird that it's not on the right side of my screen. And then static, and we're no longer dropping because we're just moving it into the function, which then, like you said, probably moves it into the async block under the hood. And then a lot of lifetimes disappear, which feels great. One lifetime got added. And then here's that pattern again. This is weird. This should be on the right side of my screen, but yes, what we did. No.
It's red.
Okay. I don't understand.
Red
It's
is
not
removed.
showing me the right side of my screen.
There,
It's just
there is only removal.
weird.
What's weird?
I I would expect to see the new code on the right hand side of my screen.
What's the new code?
The let test context equals like here I've got the old code and the new code.
The, there is no. It's like on the left is removals, and on the right it's additions. And in that where you expect, it's simply there is no addition. There's only a removal.
Yeah. So I'd expect to just see it without any green. Like that's what you'd see in like a GitHub side by side PR.
I get it. Yeah. No. Well, that's how Difft works. It's
Yeah.
omitted.
Yeah. Okay. So we removed some stuff. Great. Bye, lifetime. And like this is also weird to me because on the left, and again, this feels like the new code.
Yes.
Like we didn't
Stick
add
to the
stuff to the
colors.
old code.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we added a mute context, mute context, mute context. It's reasonable. Change this to a workspace dependency. It was great. And then a couple of moves got added to reflect the fact that we're truly moving this thing around. So
Mm-hmm.
this all feels good to me.
Okay.
I'll do a mob done.
Yes, let's do that. But let's not make a PR because then we'd have to wait for the CI. I think we can stack two commits if we're
Okay.
lucky.
Good
And if
commit.
we're not, we can make a PR for tomorrow.
So this is
The crux of it is that the test one of the test context, what is it, the API test content?
this is a
Test context?
chore called test infrastructure.
I think yeah, we're not changing anything in any implementation, are we? No, we are.
I don't
Sorry,
think so.
it's can you show me again like the what are the like scroll through it so we find the structs that have changes in them? Oh,
We
I
are
see
not
the
changing
files. That's
anything
nice.
in any production code. We are changing what looks like production code here, but this is a test. Great.
Okay.
Everything else
And
is
the
test
crux of the
test.
change.
So the crux of the change is that we're like not passing references to test context and database context. They're being
Just
moved with ownership.
scroll and show me the.
The like juiciest part, I guess, is where we do the like this sort of a pattern right here. Previously, we passed a ref mute and then dropped it after,
There is
and now we just
no what I would consider the is the database context. I think these are two changes. It's both that we're passing the test context owned and that it does not borrow database context.
test context does not borrow database. Yeah, yeah, sure. It's like yeah. I agree. We have this like layers of the onion here, like this width pattern for context, and we have the database context, which is our like lowest level helper, but then we build a test context
Mm-hmm.
helper on top of it.
So we could call this less references in
It's
test
like it's
util.
like move context rather than uh you know
Mm-hmm.
borrowing references.
Test context.
Well, there's test context and database context. We did it with both of them.
Mm-hmm. But
So I don't know. I could say star context to reflect both of those.
but this nothing here says that this has only to do with tests, which I find kind of useful to say.
Store test.
Ah, yeah.
I mean, I'm also happy to just like say these are test contexts in the sense that like
That
They're only
I
used
like
in
that.
tests. And one of them happens to be called test context, but whatever. The database context is also, I guess it's not strictly just for testing. It's also for developer tooling, but whatever.
Rather than borrowing them or just borrowing.
Rather than borrowing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, works for me.
Do it.
Good point. And then what were you saying about waiting for CI?
I don't. If we can, in these 20 minutes, do the other field owned and not referenced, we could. Because I don't want to wait for CI to merge this.
Why would we have to wait for CI?
We don't necessarily have to.
Okay. But that said, I'm happy to just tilt it up on this branch. I was confused about the waiting. Um, so I'll rotate. Go for it.
T7. Switch to the base branch. Pull it. Git trim. Yeah, that's okay. All these. Git trim without arguments is rather safe, even though it
Okay.
deletes base branches, which I can always restore. So I guess that's fine.
Mhm.
So mob start again.
Do it.
Shouldn't shouldn't have errors, buddy. I used to have a better like reloading of. I don't know why it's not working now. Auto read. I think I should make a to do for that. Okay. So test context. This one. We want it to not have a reference here.
Okay.
But this thing is borrowing. What's it borrowing anyway? From the endpoint. It's borrowing
What do you see here that makes you say it's borrowing?
this.
The lifetime? Okay.
Can we make this static? If we make this static, then we can not use. The question is, can we make it static? So here is irrelevant. This is irrelevant. It's where uh, yeah, we need to remove the generics everywhere, like for this, for example. Otherwise, we don't have that implementation of with.
Mhm.
So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. I think this will be static.
Okay.
With, is that all?
I don't know.
Just.
Trouble went away.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And then just dumping leaves outside. Not in California anymore.
What? Sorry, what happened?
Oh, it's just the wind picked up and it started dumping leaves on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the trees are losing their leaves, and like you don't see this at least where we live in California.
Mm. So
Nice. Well,
that's
you were right.
one.
We did it in 20 minutes.
Um, this looks like a commit, but I
Okay.
think we also kind of wanted to do this for some purpose. But
Well, we're trying
yeah,
to make it so we can write the
mm,
test helper macro, and it's possible that we've now laid the groundwork that will let us do that.
I think so. I think so.
That would be nice.
So I'll try an experiment here just to make sure that committing something correct. And I'm done for this. If staged, that is all.
Beautiful.
Mm. I think this works because this where we construct a test context,
Mm-hmm.
this API client ends up being where the whatever satisfies din endpoint of output equals response happens to
Mm-hmm.
be of a static lifetime and not some borrow.
Okay.
That makes sense?
That makes sense.
This
I don't think I understand what static lifetimes are.
this and static lifetimes are a simple concept. Never helps by starting with that. Uh, it means if it's a reference, it's a bound. First, we gotta understand this is a bound. If we go to this, what is the type here? Type this type. This is some lifetime a, right? And we are passing for that lifetime a. We are passing static, right? So this is a
Okay.
bound, and it ends up as a bound here, right? Plus, so this is a trait plus a bound. So as a bound, the keyword static, it says, okay, this type must either be a non-reference or a reference with a static lifetime.
Okay.
I am not in a mob branch, so let me complete my point.
Mm-hmm.
And in our case, that's a bound on the endpoint, right? Like test client of some box endpoint. So the endpoint here is this endpoint. What is the type of that endpoint? It's, no, this is endpoint of lifetime A. I think our endpoint could be static. This, it's an unrelated change, but it happens to be correct.
Okay.
So I think that would be our next change.
Sure.
Let me commit this. What is modified now? Oh, I remove. Sorry. Here.
Looks good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Staged. Commit. Sure. Test context. Eh. Static lifetime in lines field type client field of this context. This okay?
Looks good.
All the leaves are brown and the sky is gray.
Alright, so
I'd be
screen.
safe and warm if I was in LA.
I can tell you the leaves here are not all brown. We have some color. It's bright. Uh, all right. So where's that other static? Do we want to add another commit to this PR?
Sure.
Where was it?
There's a function called endpoint from our API lib.
Got it.
Your screen is frozen for me.
Mhm.
It's okay now.
Great. Okay. I'm making the change. It looks like everything's green. There we go.
Perfect.
Next. Done.
Say the function that calls endpoint.
You. That might be multiple places.
Nah, I think it's just main. I mean, like in the implementation, it's only main.
It's in the test and it's in name. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Nothing.
Looks good. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Git commit. Or no refactor. I guess this is actual production code
Oh,
now.
it's not even a refactor because it is, but yeah, but you can
Speaking as a
sure.
Rust person, you're like, this has no effect on the produce binary or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So refactor, use a static lifetime instead of a, I don't even know, configured a lifetime. Borrowed ref. Don't borrow a lifetime unnecessarily. Just tell me what
But
to type.
let's start with what we're changing. This is the
Just like
API FN endpoint returns a, a static lifetime. Good.
Good enough for me. Sure. Okay. Git push, GHPR create.
Yeah, yeah.
Alrighty.
We got the branch name funny.
API test macro. Yeah, it's not there yet. I'll say this is like prep for API test macro.
I would say let's call it reduce references in reduce some eliminate some references.
There we go. All right. Cool. So we will take another stab at the test macro. And we can do that now or save it for tomorrow.
Uh, yes, we can. And do you? We will take another stab at it in the same way, right? The same way that we tried. Not yet the fully declarative
Right.
variant, but
Yeah, just eliminating the like a layer of indentation, hopefully,
mm-hmm.
and maybe the async move stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see how far we can take that. I think not far because you still need it to be a closure. Still needs to be a closure that takes the context, and then it could say it's. But maybe that's less, right? Maybe that's less verbose.
Yeah.
A closure that takes the. It would be an async. You remember we said maybe it doesn't even need to be async or move because we could take a TT token tree, and then
Yes.
we could add the async and the move
I remember that.
to it in the macro implementation.
Yeah. And I remember that didn't work because like there was no way to give it the binding, the reference, the binding it needed, the CTF binding.
So when we did that, the binding still didn't work.
When we did what, the token stream thing?
Token tree.
Yeah, that didn't seem to have an impact on the like scopedness of the binding.
Really?
Which I mean, that made sense to me at the time. It like really feels like not even a macro can magically introduce variables in some context. And
Because a token tree is like, well, this is not a construct in which there is a binding created. I don't know that this is a binding. I know that this is an identifier. It looks like an identifier, and then
right,
this thing that follows it looks like a block, but I don't know the connection between the identifier and then
yeah.
the block follows it.
I think we were producing like valid AST, but it was not an AST that could be compiled.
So we'd
Like
have
there
to
was an
use a closure,
identifier.
a closure, okay, an expression.
Yeah,
Take an
that,
expression, and that expression would then have to include async, move.
yeah. So I think that's where we landed. And we are like, well, okay, we're not going to actually be able to remove any boilerplate, or I think we
But
probably could have
it is
reduced the layer of
removing some
indentation.
boilerplates.
Yeah,
What boilerplates
I
they remove?
I don't remember what got us to the looking at these lifetimes. Like I don't remember if there was a thing that we like. It may have just been that you said, "I think we could do the macro we want if we do this lifetime thing," and I was like, "Okay, that'll be cool. I'll learn about a little bit about lifetimes, and we'll see where we are on the other side." But I do not have the whole story. I never had the whole story in my head.
Okay.
Um, awesome, good session.
Awesome session. Thank you, Jeremy, for your participation.
Thank you, Shahar.
Thank you for watching. Please share this with someone who might benefit from watching and who also has the time. This is time consuming, isn't it? And please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.